Hello, how are you? My name is Aisha, and today I want to speak to you guys a little bit about the Casual Killing Act of 1669. This article is from Face to Face Africa, and this is American history. So I'm going to read you this article and maybe give you a little bit of my 2 cents. So here we go. The title is A Look at the Casual Killing Act of 1669 that made it legal to kill a slave at will. So this picture is a slave auction, and it's great bargain sale of Negroes, horses, and cattle. Husbands, wives, and families sold indiscriminately at different purchases are violently separated, probably never to meet again. So this is American history. What escapes many people is that the whimsical killing of enslaved blacks in the U.S. during slavery and even after by white folks without punitive consequence is based on laws passed by white politicians who happen to be plantation owners as well. One such devious law is the Casual Killing Act of 1669, which declared it legal to kill a slave while correcting because malice could not be presumed. The casual killing of slaves says that if a slave dies while resisting his master, the act will not be presumed to have occurred with prepense malice. So just the fact that you think that another human should not be able to fight you because they are in slavery or they have been captured and enslaved by you is crazy, and it shows you just how diabolical people's minds are or were back then. I'm not going to give nobody no excuses. People are still crazy to this day, but just think about that time, you actually putting in laws to say, hey, if you even try to fight back, even though you have every God-given right to fight back, you can't. That's the craziness of America. The men of the General Assembly of Virginia completely removed the penalty for those who by chance murdered a slave in the process of punishment, as the black laborer was deemed to be property. Other slave laws passed in Virginia showed the disregard for human life and how different chattel slavery in the U.S. was to other forms of slavery practice on continental Africa. So to all those people that like to say, Africans enslaved each other, Black people enslaved each other, we all enslaved each other. First of all, you're deflecting from just American slavery just altogether. Second, most of those tribes that enslaved each other, they enslaved each other for reasons, and then they let them go after a time. People should really read about these things, and I'm pretty sure that I'm not getting it entirely right, but that was how slavery went for the most part. Look it up for yourself. Even in the Bible, I mean, like, I know people don't like to get into the Bible because they like to stay with quote unquote real world ish, but even in the Bible it says you take someone into slavery, you let them go on the 7th year. I believe I read that. I could be wrong, but I feel like I'm not wrong. I felt like it said on the 7th year you let your slaves go. Let me know if I'm wrong. By 1672, it became legal to wound or kill an enslaved person who resists arrest. Legislators also deemed that the owner of any slave killed as he resisted arrest will receive financial compensation for the loss of an enslaved laborer. Legislators also offer a reward to Indians who captured enslaved or escaped slaves and returned them to a justice of the peace. So the only thing that has changed now is if you can prove that the cops, I know we're talking about slave and masters, but just stick with me. When we're talking about the cops murdering unarmed Black people, the only thing that switched or that changed was now if they can deem that what the cop did was wrong, the cop's not going to go to jail, but now the family gets compensated. I'm not saying that you don't deserve compensation, but I just feel like giving someone money in return for someone's life is bogus. Like, sorry I killed your kid, but will $500,000 do? Like, will that ease your pain a little bit? That's basically what people are saying. Like, be mad at me if you want. It doesn't really matter. These are my thoughts. I'm not going to apologize. I'm not going to go back and forth. Like, that's what you're basically doing when you give someone's family money in exchange for murdering them. So moving on. Early in 1639 to 1640, the General Assembly of Virginia specifically excludes Blacks from the requirement of possessing arms, and crucially, in 1662, Blacks faced the possibility of life servitude. The General Assembly of Virginia decided that any child born to an enslaved woman will also be a slave. So I remember watching this documentary some years ago. It was one of the Asian countries, and I don't mean to be so just, say an Asian country. I really wish that I could pinpoint it, but like I said, I watched this years ago. I remember thinking it was so horrible. They said that when they put a person in jail, that if their children were born in jail, they were just automatically like a jail or two, like in prison. If these women had their kids in jail, then that baby was basically a slave to the jail and had to stay there. And I even watched, and in the same documentary, they spoke about whole families being in jail. Their whole family could basically come to the jail and stay there. And it's just like, I thought that was so horrible. Now reading my own history of my own people that's happening to, it's almost like, well, what the hell, man? They got us feeling so bad about the plight of other people. And I don't mind, because I'm a compassionate person. I like to think of myself as a compassionate person. And I really do want freedom for everybody else. But they push, this country loves to forget about the plight of Black people and loves to push everybody else's issues to the forefront. It's like every single time a Black person has an issue, they push 3 other people of color, of different colors, with their own issues before us. And they're like, see, Black people, we all got issues too. It's not all about you. And it's just like, it's never been about us. You've taken pride in just making our lives hell on earth. And then when we feel the need to say anything about anything that's ever happened to us, you turn around and you say, it's not about you, Black people. But it's always been about us. You've always tortured us. You've always done crazy shit to us. And then you always want to say, can't we just get along? Well, we were all trying to get along while you were demonizing us and killing us and doing crazy shit to us. So I just, America. There were slave laws which further restricted freedom of Blacks and legalized different treatment for Blacks and whites. 1667, Virginia lawmakers say baptism does not bring freedom to Blacks. The statute is passed because some slaves used their status as a Christian in the 1640s and 1650s to argue for their freedom or for the freedom for a child. Legislators also encouraged slave owners to Christianize their enslaved men, women, and children. 1668. Free Black women, like enslaved females over the age of 16, are deemed tithable. The Virginia General Assembly said Freedom does not exempt Black women from taxation. 1680. Virginia's General Assembly restricts the ability of slaves to meet at gatherings, including funerals. So even if you just lost a loved one, you don't get the chance to go and pay your respect to that loved one, see that loved one last time. Kind of what happened in the Corona stage. Remember, everyone was shut down. You didn't get to see your loved ones, and it was really sad, wasn't it? It became legal for a white person or person to kill an escaped slave who resists capture. What's going on in America right now? Slaves also are forbidden to arm themselves for either offensive or defensive purposes. Punishment, 20 lashes on one's bare back. Leave the plantation without the written permission of one's master, mistress, or overseer. Punishment, 20 lashes on one's bare back. Lift up your hand against any Christian. Punishment, 30 lashes on one's bare back. Why would you even be a Christian at this point? 1691, any white person married to a Black or mulatto is banished, and a systematic plan is established to capture outlying slaves. So even white people that wanted to be around Black people, this is your punishment. So when white people march with us and say, hey, we want to be a part of liberating you, or just giving you some kind of ease or freedom. You see how they treated them? Even the white people were beat down by the cops in the 60s up until now, just for standing up and fighting for Black people. Because that's what America tells you. You fight for this Black person, you get beat down with them. If an outlying slave is killed while resisting capture, the owner receives financial compensation for the laborer. Partners in an interracial marriage cannot stay in the colony for more than 3 months after they married. We don't want to see you guys together. A fine of 15 pounds sterling is levied on an English woman who gives birth to a mulatto child. The fine is to be paid within a month of the child's birth. If a woman cannot pay the fine, she is to serve 5 years as an indentured servant. Not quite slavery, but an indentured servant. If the mother is an indentured servant, she faces an additional 5 years of servitude after the completion of her indenture. So, she's like, the country, America is saying, you lay down with one of those and you will be taxed, and you won't be as bad as them. You won't be thrown into slavery, but we will put your ass in indentured servitude. A mulatto child born to a white indentured servant will serve a 30-year indenture. A master must transport an emancipated slave out of Virginia within 6 months of receiving his or her freedom. 1692, slaves are denied the right to a jury trial for capital offenses. A minimum of 4 justices of the peace hear evidence and determine the fate of the accused. Legislators also decide that enslaved individuals are not permitted to own horses, cattle, and hogs after December 31st of that year. 1705, freedmen of color lose the right to hold public office. So people of color were holding offices and they got it stripped away from them because of the color of their skin. 1705, Blacks, freed and enslaved, are denied the right to testify as witnesses in court cases. That went for a really, really long time. That went throughout the 1900s, at least, up into the 60s, where they would I just lost my whole track of thought. They would decide that a Black person did something, anything, whatever, and then have a whole white jury just waiting to put that ass in jail. So 1705, all Black, mulatto, and Indian slaves are considered real estate. 1705, enslaved men are not allowed to serve in a militia. 1705, in an act concerning servants and slaves, Virginia's lawmakers increased the indenture of a mulatto child born to a white woman to 31 years. Determined that if a white man or white woman marries a Black partner, the white individual will be sent to jail for 6 months and fined 10 pounds current money of Virginia. Determined that any minister who marries an interracial couple will be charged a fine of 10,000 pounds of tobacco. Determined that any escaped slave who is unwilling or unable to name his or her owner will be sent to the public jail. So, yeah, that was the Casual Killing Act of 1669 and other laws that were put on Blacks thereafter. So I appreciate you listening. Thank you so much. Have a good day. Bye.